Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're all doing alright. Welcome to the session on XAT Parajumbles. Before we get started, before we go any further, I'm gonna have to just pause for a minute and just ensure that the session is audible. I'm audible and visible on the session, right? So just give me a second to do the same, and we'll get started any minute now. Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, I think we are online. Uh, okay, thank you so much. So let's start the session, guys. See, so XAT Parajumbles, right? Okay, and so I think. All right. So I'll give you a very slight brief introduction about XAT before we go there. So guys, all right. So it's a short 30-minute session, and we'll be looking at parajumbles that have been asked in XAT in previous years. I think I have a couple of questions from 2019 itself, XAT 2019, and maybe one from 2015 probably. Right. So yeah, XAT parajumbles there, guys. See, when it comes to reading comprehension, right, and comparing reading comprehension from of CAT and XAT, there are a lot of dissimilarities, right? Like not everything is the same. There are quite a lot of differences there. But when it comes to parajumbles, when you want to and you're trying to compare XAT and CAT parajumbles, uh, there's not so much of dissimilarity there, right? It's just that like a typical more than average or difficulty level CAT parajumble would be also similar to a more than average XAT parajumble of more than average difficulty level. So yeah, so there's not much similarity there. The only dissimilarity, there's not so much of difference there, but the only difference is that in case of CAT you have to type in the answers. You've had to type in the answers so far, and in case of XAT, at least until last year you were given options to select from, right? So that makes the task a whole lot easier, right? So in case of XAT, and we are expecting, we are not like, let's see how it goes this year, okay, and we'll see about that. All right, so before anything else, let me just I'll give you a very small brief about myself. I'm Anupam Mishra here, this guy, and I'm from the batch of 2018 AB Lucknow. These are my CAT credentials that you can see on your screen, and I've worked as a verbal and quant faculty before I joined AB Lucknow. Alright, so other stuff, you can just go to my profile on any of the social media sites and check it out if you want. We have already discussed the paper pattern of XAT in previous sessions, where we know that almost 26 percent of questions, 26 not percent, sorry, 26 questions are from verbal and logical ability, 21 from decision making, and 27 from quant and DI. This was XAT 2019. There might be some changes, like very slight changes in number of questions. There can be, every year there are. Usually there are. Okay, but the changes won't be drastic. It will almost be more or less on the same line. Okay, so yeah. Now, talking about our targets, what we should be targeting. We've already discussed this, right? To clear the sectionals, you should be targeting at a score of. See, I'm talking just about verbal and logical ability, right? 26 questions of verbal and logical ability, where you get 1 mark for every correct answer and minus 0.25 for every incorrect answer. So, what you're supposed to do is, see, to ensure that this section does not hamstring your efforts to get into top colleges that take XAT scores like XLRI, you have to ensure that you at least score a sectional, you at least clear the sectional cutoffs, which are around 6.5 or 7, generally 6.5 or 7 for verbal and logical ability. But we'll take a buffer of 1 more mark, and we'll try to target above 7.5, that will at least fetch you a percentile of north, that should be north of 85% or something. Okay, but that's not enough. That is just for clearing the sectional cutoffs. You also have to score, right, to get into these best colleges, good colleges. So you have to ensure, like after the first 7.5, you need to capitalize as much as you can up till 12. And if you can go above 12, well, in that case you have definitely cracked the section, you can say that. You'll be among the top in the country too, in terms of verbal ability and verbal and logical ability scores for that. Okay, so these are our targets, and what are the sections? What all will we shall be looking at? In verbal and logical ability, when it comes to verbal and logical ability of that, what are the areas that we should be focusing on? The first is, of course, vocabulary and grammar, and right here, you can see. Let me just use a highlighter. Wait a second. Yeah, so you can see vocabulary and grammar, right? 4 to 5 questions of vocabulary and grammar, 13 to 15 questions of RCs, 2 questions of Parajumbles. They've stuck with this pattern. The number of questions in verbal and logical ability may change from 26 to 28, or then again to 26. The number of questions in the RCs generally deviate a little bit. Even vocabulary and grammar questions deviate sometimes. But the one thing is kept consistent in their paper, that is the Parajumble questions. If you look at the past year's papers of 2019, 18, 2019, 18, 17, 16, all of them. Okay, you'll always see that there always have been exactly 2 Parajumble questions, exactly 2 Parajumble questions. Okay, so yeah, so that's the scenario. And apart from this, there is also critical reasoning and parasummary or inference questions. So but that's something we'll be looking at, we shall be looking at at some point later. Today's session is mainly about this Parajumble section, is mainly about the Parajumble section here, that you can see right here. Okay, and it's very very straightforward. What we are going to be doing here today. In the next remaining 20 minutes that we have remaining, I think we have 20 more minutes remaining in the session, we shall be attempting 2 Parajumble questions. Okay, we shall be attempting 2 Parajumble questions for you. Okay, and yeah, okay, and we'll try to solve them. So let's start. Okay. All right, guys. So see, Parajumbles ke liye I've already made a course on Unacademy's free platform. You can look up my profile, Anupam Mishra, and search for Parajumbles course. I've already made a very step-by-step. I've laid out a very step-by-step process, or a protocol, as you may call it, to solve any Parajumble questions, and which I think you will find quite helpful if you get a chance to go through it. So do ensure, if you have some time, to go through it. It's free. Okay, and so I'm gonna be using the same protocol here. The protocol is something like this. The first step is you go through all the options while keeping sorry, not options, sorry, what I mean to say is go through all the sentences while keeping note of all the clues like pronouns, pronouns, articles, conjunctions, the logical flow, or abbreviations, timeline, etc. Anything that can help you find the right sequence of the paragraph of these sentences, right? So you do that first, and after that, once you're done with that, you use the clues that you come across to find the right to form some strong pairs and slack pairs. Now, what are strong pairs and slack pairs? Strong pairs are basically any 2 sentences which you're sure that they'll go together. There is, like, you're totally, you think it is undisputable. You think it is undisputable that these 2 sentences cannot go together. You'll always think that they have to go together. There's no chance any third sentence can get between these two. That's a strong pair. A slack pair is basically where you know that a sentence Y should come after sentence X, but you're not sure about the immediacy. You're not sure if the sentence Y should come immediately after sentence X, or can there be one or maybe more than one sentences between them. All you're sure about is the sequence. You just know that Y has to come after X. It cannot come before. That's all you know. Okay, how much later after X, you don't know about that. So that's a slack pair. Both of these type of pairs are quite useful, quite helpful when it comes to solving your Parajumbles, right? So first step is go through the sentences. Be mindful of all the clues that you're able to spot. Second step is use these clues to make the strong and slack pairs, and then use these strong and slack pairs to make a skeleton, and then finally get your answer. But guys, that's generally a protocol for when you're solving CAT questions when you don't have options. In scenarios where you have options, okay, it can always be quite helpful to see if there is any kind of similarity between options. For example, if you see in option A and D, both of them say that the second sentence is probably the one that is beginning the paragraph. On the other hand, while B, E and C kind of say that it's the fourth sentence that talks about that should begin the paragraph, right? So you can also use that to eliminate a lot of choices, which will make the task easier for you. Okay, so let's start. Let's solve this parajumble. See, I understand that my image might be blocking this top right part on your screen of the parajumble of the sentence, but I'll make sure I'll read out. I'll read it out aloud, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so they subjected the now. Wait a second. See, they subjected. This is the first clue right here. The residues from shards of the Rita vessels. The Rita vessels, that means Rita vessels must have been mentioned somewhere before earlier. To radiocarbon dating to determine their ages. Their ages means Rita vessels ages, and chromatography, mass spectrometry, GCMS, to identify their structure and isotopic composition, and found that the vessels were used to store cheese. Alright, so we are talking about how the residues from the shards of these vessels were subjected to some kind of experiments, etc., 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 to identify the structure and composition and isotopic composition, and found isotopic composition and the structure, and they found that these vessels used to store cheese. Fair enough. The clues here are, we should be noting the clues here are they and the here, right? They subjected. Who subjected? We need to know that. And the Rita vessels, that means the Rita vessels must have been mentioned before in one of the sentences. Let's go to the second one. In many Neolithic sites near the Adriatic Sea, researchers unearthed cone-shaped clay vessels known as Rita. Guys, please understand, researchers unearthed cone-shaped clay vessels known as Rita. This known as Rita part is very important, because this is the part that is introducing Rita vessels to you. That means one should definitely come after two. So if I just write 2 here, I am very sure that 1 has to come after 2. Now there might be a sentence that, there's a chance that something might come in between, and there's a chance that something might come even before 2. But what I am definitely sure about is, like I'm sure about this being a slack pair. Okay, that 1 has to come after 2. Then next, with 4 legs on the bottom and a round opening on the side. Fair enough. Fresh milk couldn't be kept for long without going bad. Cheese on the other hand, right, could be stored for months at a time, providing much needed calories to early farmers between harvests. Okay. Now, guys, please understand that in the first sentence, it says that to identify the structure and isotopic composition, and found that the vessels you were used to store cheese. So it seems like cheese has been mentioned here for the first time, and then this kind of gives the justification why these people to whom these vessels belonged in the past might have preferred storing cheese in these vessels instead of storing milk, because milk could not be kept for long without going bad. Cheese, on the other hand, could be stored for months at a time, right? So that's the reason. So that's why 1-3 kind of make a link. 1-3 might make a link, and 2 and 1 also can make a link. Okay, we will see about it later. Let's read the other sentences. Archaeologists who used to assume animals such as cows and goats were mainly used for meat early in the domestication history are thus forced to admit, guys, this is very important, are thus forced to admit. This will basically solve, if there was this one sentence, if there was this one clue which could help solve almost 70 or 80% of your parajumble, for this parajumble it will be this clue. Okay, it will be this clue. Are thus forced to admit that humans might have been using animals for dairy quite early in their domestication history. So guys, are thus forced to admit, what does it mean? Thus forced, that means this should come as a sort of conclusion to something that has been talked about earlier, right? Okay, so like you say, okay, so it probably seems like these first 3 set of sentences, 2, 1, 2, 3, talk about how the vessels have been found, which on some sort of testing and experimentation showed that they used to contain cheese, which was easier to store as compared to milk, and thus we can conclude that people in early history did not just domesticate animals for their meat, they also domesticated them for dairy. right? So that does make sense, that does ensures that shows you that 4 should definitely come after 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and we've already established that 1 and 3 is a link. We have already established that 1 and 3 is a link. So I'm just gonna put this here. So 1 and 3 have to go together, right? 2 has to come before 1. We know that 2 has to come before 1, and 4 has to come after 2, 1 and 3. So I'm just gonna put 4 here. I'm just gonna put 4 here. Okay, so okay, all right. I think the top right section is not visible, right? Let me just I'll do what, guys, just don't worry. I'll write it in the section here. So we know that 1 has to come after 2, so I'm gonna write 2 here. Okay, I'm gonna write 2 here, and we also know that 1 and 3 have to go together, so I'm gonna write 1 and 3 together here. And we know that 4 has to come after 3, not necessarily right after 3, but it has to come in terms of sequence. It has to be, it cannot come before 3. See guys, we are not sure if 4 has to come right after 3. That's why I'm leaving some space here, that just in case we figure out that 5 should come before 4, we'll put it here. Or if we figure out that 5 should come somewhere maybe between 2 and 1, or maybe somewhere between maybe after 4, we will put it there. So we have kept room open for possibilities. Okay, so archaeologists who used to assume that animals such as cows and goats were mainly used for meat early in their domestication history are thus forced to humans might have been using animals for dairy quite early in their domestication history. Fair enough. So yes, so these 3 points kind of together, the 3 points that you can see, 2, 1, 3, right? 2, 1, 3 kind of together point to the fact that yes, thus these 3 points have thus forced archaeologists to believe that humans do flexible use. Okay, in addition to flexible use. All right. So guys, see, understand. See, sometimes, many times, it will happen that the parajumbles that you come across will be such that they can you can mainly rely on clues to solve them. But many times, what will also happen is that you might just come across a parajumble which does not have so many clues in it. Then, on the other hand, supply of spectrum is restricted due to competing. See guys, I totally understand. See, so far we have read 3 sentences. We have been able to understand a little bit of logic in each of these sentences, and probably if we try, we'll also be able to make some sort of connection, or maybe some sort of notion. We'll be able to have some sort of notion where we understand that what exactly is the content talking about, and thus allow ourselves to get into some depth and find the right sequence. Yes, that is something that can definitely be done. But sometimes guys also understand that these questions can actually be quite easier than they seem. Okay, in fact this current question that you have on your screen is actually quite easier than it seems. See, I totally understand you. By now you must be like you probably are not able to differentiate very clearly what each of these sentences talk about, right? But okay, just stay with me. Just let's solve this next question. Next sentence. Let's go through these next sentences. On the other hand, supply of spectrum is restricted due to competing nature of uses vested nature of uses and vested interests of incumbent holders. On the other hand is the clue that will solve this parajumble for you. On the other hand, what? On the other hand, supply of spectrum. That means there must have been some sentence between on the other hand, like above on the other hand, right? And that sentence has to be something which does not talk about supply of spectrum, because after on the other hand, whatever you talk about is something that is not that has not been mentioned before this phrase. Okay, so let's go through the next sentence. The demand for spectrum has never been so acute as today's communication services. Okay, extend beyond simple voice to complex data and video, augmented by evolving technologies such as peer. So guys, right? So the key here is what? What is the key here? See, in this case, we're talking about supply of spectrum. In this case, what is the problem? The demand for spectrum. So here, in one scenario, we're talking about your demand, okay, and in this scenario, we're talking about your supply, right? Okay, so we're talking about this here you have supply, this here you have demand, right? So this will completely make sense, right? Don't you think this will make sense? हेलो अभिषेक, हाउ आर यू? डिमांड के देखो, पहले वो डिमांड के ऊपर बात करेगा, उसके बाद वो किस पे बात करेगा, उसके बाद वो सप्लाई की बात करेगा ऑन द अदर हैंड करके. सो 5-4 हैव टू मेक अ स्ट्रॉन्ग लिंक. 5-4 हैज टू मेक अ स्ट्रॉन्ग लिंक. There is it is totally undisputed. And I'll tell you what, I understand that this parajumble is one of the more complex ones. ये थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लेक्स वाला पैराजम्बल है. पर आप एक बार ऑप्शन पे देखिए, आप एक बार ऑप्शन पे देख के बताओ मुझे, is there any like this first option, it says it gives you 4-5. ये 4-5 बोल रहा है, 5-4 नहीं बोल रहा. तो ये तो गया आपका. This is gone. This is also saying 4-5, so this is also gone. This one says this doesn't say 4-5-4. It says it has just kept 5 and 4 apart, so gone. This also says 4-5 apart, 4-5, so it's gone. The only sentence that you have, the only option you have remaining is 5-4, which is actually your answer. This is actually your answer because 2-5-5-4 is correct. Okay. So guys, see, a lot of times you might come across questions which might seem quite tricky and very time consuming, but it happens more often than you think, that it might just have a very small trick that can be used to just clearly solve, get across the, like, get the question right and move on to other questions. Invest your time in questions other than that. Okay. So that's it from my side so far as this uh, session is concerned. The third parajumble, I wanted to solve it, but we don't have enough time. Guys, I'll close the session by telling you about the course for CAT 2020. For CAT 2020, a brief disclaimer. What I'm going to talk about now is relating to CAT 2020 and XAT 2020, both of them. So I'm coming up with a course on the genre series that will be starting on 9th January next year to 9th January 2020, and in that, so it's a course which is specialized in reading comprehension, and it's one of a kind. It's a course that has never been brought online or offline anywhere. Okay. How is it? It's different in a way that we shall be covering reading comprehensions passages from various genres one by one. Like for example, in the first week of the course, we shall take up all the like as many science and technology passages as many as we can. Then in the next series of classes of the course, we'll take up philosophy and religion passages, then economics and management. So in this way, guys, it will actually help you improve your exposure across various genres. Okay, which should eventually help you improve your exposure across various genres, right? It will not just stay at what do you say? Will not just have to stay at, wait a second. It will not just have to stay at and to get a laser pointer. It will not just need to stay at just a 20% exposure or 30% exposure, which is generally the case with most of the kids, most of the learners. We're gonna ensure that we push you towards 80% or 70% of exposure of 70 to 80 to 90, 80 to 100% to a variety of passages from a variety of genres, right? Which will, so this is a graph that I've already explained earlier, so that's why I'm not going into this so much deep so deep into this right now. Okay, so so yes, so this is one of the courses that you can definitely look forward to. We start this course in January and it will go on in Feb, March, April, May, June, July, up until then, right? So yeah. Then the genres that we shall cover, there are 8 genres in total. We'll be doing at least a minimum of 16 CAT quality passages for each of the genre. We'll talk about 130 passages in total, or more, or even maybe more than that. And well, the course will be a quite lengthy one because we will be dealing with all of these genres in detail. Okay, so yeah. So that's it, guys. Some of the reviews from the genre series course that I had put up on the free platform. That was the free platform version of that course. So you can see for yourself how much it has been helpful to a lot of people. And finally, before I close, I'll just tell you about this XAT course, Quant course for capsule course for Quant, a course on Quant for XAT, right? Just the quantitative aptitude and data interpretation part for XAT. We shall be covering that. That's a course that actually starting on 17th of, it says 16th here, but I had to reschedule one of the classes because of some work. So it will be starting from 17th of December. Okay, 17th of December, and so ensure that if you want to attend this, it's a pretty small and tiny course. You can always use my referral code to get the discount. Okay. And that's it, guys. With this, I'll bring the session to an end. I hope you were able to learn a bit or two about Parajumbles. Okay, and that's it from my side. Thanks a ton, and uh, have a great weekend. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thanks a ton. I'll take your leave now. Thank you so much. Thank